You've discovered the flow arts and the community around it, and you can't help but notice that, well, it's pretty hot around here. Pun intended. Might you find love with a fellow prop spinner? Will you find heartache? Is it even a good idea to date within the scene? Let's unpack some stuff here. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, I want to talk about flow arts from the lens of finding partners and lovers in the community. What can go wrong? And what can go right? Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterra Light Toys, Spinballs, and Ultrapoi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing businesses and what they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. And special thanks to non-business friends of the channel, Johnny Howard, Lain Mochinsky, and Pekha Pekkonen. Thank you all so very much for your support for my work and my mission. The flow arts community can be a fun place to be. The people are friendly, open, and creative, and sometimes being in that community can make you feel like you're understood in a way that happens nowhere else. So it's hardly surprising that people take a look around and think, hey, this community might not be a bad place to look for potential romantic or sexual partners. But is that actually a good idea? What are the benefits? What are the potential pitfalls? Is dating in the flow arts more likely to result in happily ever after, or listening to Taylor Swift songs on repeat as you work your way through a quart of ice cream? Not that I would know. The short answer from my perspective, yes. But let's get into why this is a complicated question, let alone a complicated answer. If you're new here, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I post videos on poi spinning and flow arts, so make sure you get notified every time I upload a new one. So I'm going to say up front that the views I'm expressing here are going to be based upon a mixture of my own personal experiences, as well as those of people that I know and that I've seen shared online. In my 15-year career in the flow arts, I have both dated people within the scene as well as outside of it, and it's definitely given me an interesting sample set to work with. And before you ask, no, I am not going to be sharing any personal details about me or anyone else here. I'm not putting anyone on blast. If you want tea on relationship drama in the flow arts, there's a Facebook group for that. And we also have to acknowledge the obvious here, which is that my perspective is that of a cis-het monogamous white man in the flow arts scene, and that inevitably filters the experiences that I have in it. I'm gonna do my best here to incorporate other views and experiences outside of my own, but I also have no shortage of blind spots. So if I'm wearing that privilege in a way that's tainting the information that I'm sharing, please do not hesitate to sound off about what I am missing in the comments. With all that said, let's first talk about some of the positives about dating within the flow art scene. From the jump, we have to point out the obvious. It is great having one or more partners with whom you share a hobby or leisure activity. This isn't restricted to the flow arts, and whether it's biking, cooking, or binging Netflix shows, having things that you can do with your partner or partners is part of what makes relationships work. And because flow and fire arts are so incredibly niche, it can sometimes be a challenge to bridge the gaps with somebody who is either adjacent to it or not involved in it at all. I've definitely dated people that didn't understand my commitment to the flow arts, and over time, it became a wedge that was more and more difficult to try and work through. Dating another flow artist means that you're with somebody who not only supports your hobby, but is right there with you in it, going to spin jams and flow festivals, and maybe even practicing with you. It means time spent in flow is not time spent apart, and that can be huge. Second, it can be super awesome to do flow arts collaborations with somebody you're romantically or sexually involved with. Doing that work together can deepen the relationship and result in great work that neither or none of you were capable of on your own. And there are so many potential collaboration opportunities too. Shooting videos together, building props together, choreographing performances together, running events together. These really are opportunities to create things that are more than the sum of their parts. Plus which, working on projects together isn't just an opportunity to create a cool outcome, but also to workshop things like navigating compromises and conflicts in a space that can be a great testing ground for developing new techniques without putting the relationship itself at risk. Finally, what about the shared values of flow artists? We tend to have a pretty unique set of values, perspectives, and worldviews that certainly make it seem like dating one or more other flow artists makes it more likely that you'll connect with somebody who shares your values and life goals. But this one's actually just a little bit complicated, because I think this is a major motivation a lot of people have in dating within the scene. But it's also a textbook example of a really specific cognitive bias that human beings employ. Now, stick with me here for a second, but there's actually a really famous psychology problem that goes like this. There's a young woman named Linda. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy, and as a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Is it more likely that Linda is A, a bank teller, or B, a bank teller and a feminist? If you want to, you can pause this video for a second to think on it. I'll give you the answer in just a moment. So this one can actually be really, really hard for people to wrap their heads around. But think of it this way. There is a population of the total number of bankers in the world, and there is a population of the total number of feminists in the world. Some bankers are feminists, but not all, and some feminists are bankers, but not all. Therefore, the total number of bankers who are feminists is smaller than the total number of bankers in the world. So believe it or not, the details of Linda's bio are absolutely irrelevant. Simply because the number of them is greater, it is statistically more likely that Linda is a banker than it is that Linda is both a banker and a feminist. Weird tangent, right? So why am I bringing it up? Because our assumption that other flow artists must share our values and ethics utilizes the same cognitive bias. Somebody being a flow artist does not necessarily mean they're more likely to share your particular ethics, values, or worldview. Yeah, I kind of tricked you on this one. It's not actually a reason to date within the flow community. Mainly, I'm bringing it up because it's a reason that I think a lot of people would offer up for dating in the flow community, but it's also one that they might not realize is flawed. Incidentally, if you're interested, I first read about the Linda problem in this really fascinating book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It's a summary of 50 years worth of research he did as a behavioral psychologist, and this is just one of many findings he made that make your brain go, ouch. I'll link to it in the description. Highly recommended. Okay, so now that I've gone on this weird tangent about behavioral psychology, because I can, let's talk explicitly about some reasons why you might not want to date in the flow arts community. First up, it really has to be said that shared hobbies do not equal shared interests, and that shared interests do not always equal compatibility. There's something to be said here, not just for the what that people do, but why they do it. The why can frequently be a bigger element of compatibility than is immediately obvious, and tends to tell you a lot more about who the person is than just the what. Because what we do is so incredibly niche, it's easy to lose sight of the why, because the what is so important to us. But it's a really important facet of compatibility and should not be ignored. And there's a lot more that goes into relationships than just having shared activities or interests. How does your partner or partners navigate conflict? How do they handle money? What are their life goals? Just because you both flow doesn't mean you'll be on the same page for all these questions. Granted, this is a risk for dating in general, so how about one more specific to dating in the scene itself? The one that I've discovered the hard way myself multiple times, and I am sure I'm not the only one, is this. It can feel awesome dating somebody in the flow world for all of the reasons I listed above, but when those relationships end, they can make a space that has felt very welcoming and comfortable now feel incredibly uncomfortable or even unsafe. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there are still friends with your exes, and power to you. But when a relationship ends, there are definitely complicated feelings to work through, and that can make it difficult to be in the same spaces that your ex is. It's not a bad idea to consider what it might be like if you split up with a fellow flow artist and you no longer felt like you could go to your local spin jam because of it. Now, this by no means is guaranteed, but it is a risk, and it's literally happened to me every single time I've dated another flow artist. So do keep it in mind, because the odds of it happening are not zero, and it can have a really catastrophic impact on your connection with your community. Next up, the elephant in the room. We are a subculture that draws together lots of people that have a deep craving to be seen and frequently are not great at setting boundaries. This means we also tend to attract no shortage of harmful actors that thrive in conditions such as this. I know no shortage of people who've dated in the flow world and left it because of abusers, narcissists, and people who have a tenuous grasp on consent, or even that just haven't done much work evaluating their relationship habits. We frequently like to think of ourselves as being more enlightened than a cohort of non-flow people, but honestly, what I've seen happen way more often is that people excuse themselves by virtue of hanging out in counterculture spaces from actually engaging in any real self-reflection or self-interrogation. This can have really catastrophic impacts on their relationships, whether platonic, romantic, sexual, or all of the above. Let's also just be fully transparent about at least one element of this picture, too. If you're a cis-het guy in the flow arts, I can almost guarantee you've made a calculation that by spending an enormous amount of time improving your prop spinning skills, you'll win not only the respect of your peers, but also the admiration of potential lovers. And this time investment has likely come at the expense of things like, say, developing a real personality, confronting your privilege, or, I don't know, going to therapy and unlearning your toxic relationship habits. I say this as a guy who has fit this mold and is still in the process of trying to right the ship, and yeah, this is real. And frankly, it's a thing to keep in mind as you date cis-het men in the flow arts. They likely have not done a lot of work on themselves, so proceed with caution. Guys, go to therapy. No, getting blasted on psychedelics does not count. And finally, because of the unique makeup of this community, it also tends to be a haven for people who shirk responsibility for their actions through toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. This is really a topic that should and probably eventually will become its own video on my channel. But especially during the quarantine, it became incredibly clear that there are a lot of people in the flow world that are deeply uncomfortable with having to experience anything remotely resembling a negative emotion, and will respond defensively, if not violently, if confronted with one. This means that in dating, there's a high likelihood of being gaslit, victim-blamed, or deflected rather than one's partner or partners engaging in accountability for their actions. There's been no shortage of incidents I've seen wherein somebody who has genuinely experienced harms is ousted from their communities for trying to air them because they're harshing the vibe or bringing everybody else down. Being told anger is toxic, positive vibes only, or forgiving them will set you free are just a couple of the many ways people get gaslit by communities that thrive on this kind of toxic positivity. And in the case of both toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing, there's also a dimension wherein people excuse themselves from doing their shadow work, from acknowledging their anger, their resentments, their jealousies. Rather than making those emotions disappear, they tend to explode out in an unpredictable manner, or worse, get projected onto those around them. Word to the wise, if somebody seems preternaturally cheerful, happy, or at peace, there might be something going on in that story that they might not want you to see. And when you do, it's a good question as to how they're going to react to your seeing it. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm a little pessimistic about dating in the flow world right now. Does that mean that you shouldn't do it? No, absolutely not. I've been around long enough that I've gotten my heart broken in a whole bunch of different ways, but you can't find love or partnership if you don't take chances. You have to try out different ways of finding it. It's hard enough to find love and companionship as it is. None of us should look to that search in such a way that we cut ourselves off completely from one potential way of finding those things. But we should be cautious and sober in our assessments of dating within the community. I know people who've had a lot of heartbreak dating other flow artists. And I know people who've found long-lasting love and amazing partnerships in it. Both are possible, and all of us should keep that in mind as we explore. Be safe out there. This video would not be possible if not for the wonderful support of all of these amazing people right here. These are my Flow patrons over on Patreon, and they, along with the people listed down in the description, help to make this video and all the videos on my channel possible. Thank you one and all for your support. Do you like my videos? Do you like my flow sessions, vlogs, reviews, combos, and more? I'm on a mission to bring poi spinning and flow arts to the wider world and help people connect with their brains and their bodies. So help me do it. Head on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and sign up. You can do that at the link in the description or the card that just popped up if you're watching on YouTube. There you can get access to a whole host of awesome rewards and help me along in my mission. Do check that out. Please and thank you. If you'd like to check out other videos I've done on flow arts culture, I'll leave a link to a playlist of them down in the description, as well as up on screen if you are watching this video on YouTube. The YouTube algorithm also thinks you'll like this top video based upon your viewing habits too, so you might want to give that a look as well. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to get outside and flow today, and I'll see you with a new video on Wednesday. Peace.